This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen 6, PDF Pen Pro 6, and PDF Pen for iPad and PDF Pen for iPhone. Find out more about all the flavors of PDF Pen at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's been a while since we've talked to Paul Kafasis of Rogue Amoeba. Usually he shows up here to comment on this, comment on that, but always to introduce a new product, and that's what we're here to talk about today, Intermission. Paul, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to be here as always.
It's always fun to have you. We never talk enough. You have so many great insights into so many things, and you still have one of the most entertaining Twitter streams out there.
Thank you.
And it's not always tech.
No, it's usually not tech, in fact.
Yeah, it seems to be somewhat philosophical in a twisted kind of way.
I'll take that. Philosophical in a twisted kind of way. I'll take that.
Yeah, that's your next T-shirt, right? So tell us about Intermission. It's always fun to see Rogue Amoeba bring out something new, and once again, you've dipped into the audio well with something that really, as far as I know, there's nothing else out there like it.
Not that I know of, yeah. So Intermission, in a nutshell, is a way to pause and rewind live audio on your Mac. So it's gotten a lot of comparisons to a TiVo, which obviously, we can't use as a marketing message, but if you've ever used a TiVo on your TV or any sort of DVR that lets you pause live TV, jump back on live TV, Intermission works very similarly on your Mac for audio that you're playing.
So, Paul, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about, because you say live audio, and I'm having trouble with that. Is that Pandora? Is that YouTube or something coming off YouTube? And speaking of YouTube, obviously it's not a video utility. But can I rewind the audio? Yes, absolutely. So it's any audio playing on your Mac. The most useful way to take advantage of it is with streaming audio. So if you're listening to something like Pandora, Sirius XM, Spotify, iTunes Radio that just came out today, basically any audio that's streaming on your Mac, generally you might have a pause button, but you're not usually able to jump back on it. And with Intermission, it sort of sits above that. It sits between the audio that's playing and your speakers and creates a buffer, just holds up to 3 hours worth of audio so that you can jump back. If you miss something, if you're listening to live talk radio, live sports, and you want to hear a quick replay, you can jump back. If you're listening to something like Pandora or Spotify, one of the ways we've seen a lot of people using it is pausing and building up a big, long buffer of audio and then skipping over songs and other things they don't actually want to hear. So, again, just a way to give you more control over the audio that you're listening to. But, yeah, basically a focus on streaming audio. It's the most powerful when you're using it with streaming audio, I think. I can see, like you say, some obvious uses for skipping things you don't want to listen to. But I've also had situations where I was listening to a webinar or something at work, and the phone rings, and it's like, now I got to make a choice. Do I answer the phone or do I keep on going to the webinar? This would let me pause the audio, and for up to 3 hours. That's pretty impressive. Take the call, then go back and listen. Right, absolutely. So that's the other thing, is any sort of interruption, the doorbell, the phone, you need to use the restroom, whatever. If your computer isn't letting you, if the application itself isn't letting you pause that, Intermission will enable you to do that. So it's something that there are a lot of sort of small uses for it. And then with streaming audio, that's sort of one of the bigger uses. But like you said, any sort of live webinars, live talks, anything online that's streaming, suddenly you have a lot more power over how you're going to listen to that. And we all love the video component, but really the audio component is probably the most important in a lot of these cases, and so that's what you've delivered. Yeah, it's something where, like you said, we've gone to the audio well again. We've always had a focus on audio, and it's something where we had some tools that made this possible for us, and we're so we just released this, about a week and a half ago, and by the time this airs, maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that, and it's something where we're sort of seeing how people wind up using it, and seeing just how useful it is for people and in what ways they use it. So we're already getting a lot of good feedback and sort of anticipating how we're going to update it and put new features in there. But it's something where, yeah, we definitely have a focus on audio, and that's sort of, we've stuck with that, and it's worked pretty well for us. So this operates at the system level, so it's not dependent upon which application or any application. It just captures audio, buffers it, and sends it back out.
Right. So it's capturing all audio right now. And by default, it just sits there in your menu bar. It's not doing anything. Audio will just play live. You won't even notice it's there. But sort of the trick is it loads when you launch your computer and it's just sitting there. But then when you need to say, hey, what did he just say? And you need to rewind, or if you want to start buffering something, then you can do it. And, it's always there ready at the ready, basically.
Very nice. And I assume that this complements all the other Rogue Amoeba utilities, airfoil,
Audio hijack. Yeah, that's one of the big ones. We've said we've got a lot of people who are interested in actually being able to record things from the past. So not just listening to things from the past, but then if something came on that they said, oh, I actually want to keep a copy of that, again, talks where you want to have those remarks to listen to again later or anything like that. You're not always necessarily prepared to record that, but if you have intermission working, you can use audio hijack after the fact. You can basically just rewind the audio and then start recording that from the past. So it's something that we document, in the manual, and it's relatively easy to get set up, but it's something where it can be very handy if you want to record something that you missed and you do need for later.
So maybe I missed this part, but it's always running, always capturing 3 hours worth of audio?
That's the idea anyway. So when it installs it, it sets itself up as a login item. So it's basically just sitting there in your menu bar. It's out of the way. It's not taking up space in your dock. It's not doing anything that you'll really notice until you want to use it. And then you click it in the menu bar and you say, okay, jump back, or you set it back to an hour ago if that's what you need to listen to, whatever you're trying to do, or just pause the audio if that's what you want. And then suddenly it's actually taking control of the audio, basically, and you're able to pause it or rewind. And then when you're done with that, you can jump back to the live audio if you want to, or you can stay behind and just sit behind by 5 minutes or an hour, whatever you're doing.
That was my next question. Can I jump around in the buffered audio?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something where actually that's probably the one of the biggest requests we've gotten already is a way to play back audio. So when when you jump back in the buffer, then suddenly you're 10 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes behind. And we've got a lot of people who said, well, I don't want to miss anything, but I do want to catch back up to reality. So enabling people to listen at a higher rate of speed, rather. So a lot of podcast apps do this, where you can listen to podcasts at 1.5 or 2x. And so we're looking at making that possible in intermission as well. So if you jump back, you can be 5 minutes behind and hear something, and then you can say, okay, now catch me up by playing at double speed or 1.5 times speed, and you can still hear everything, but you don't actually have to be behind real time for too long that way. So that's, like I said, that's one of the requests we've gotten the most from people, and that's probably something we'll be doing in the future.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the TiVo example too, where you have that, where if you jump back, then you have a couple fast forward options. Obviously not, that's for video, but the concept remains the same. You can catch up to where you want to be.
Right, absolutely. And as it exists right now, you can jump forward again in a discrete increment, 10 seconds or whatever you set it to, or you can jump all the way to live. So it is possible to slowly catch back up, but that playback at a faster speed is something that we're looking at for the future.
Now, assuming let's say I've backed up by a minute, and I'm listening, then I jump ahead to live. Am I just jumping ahead in the buffer? I'm not affecting the buffer, so it's still there if I want to go back and listen again.
Right. Absolutely. So it's capturing, like I said, up to the last 3 hours worth of audio. So when your computer starts up, the buffer's empty, but when you start playing some audio, the buffer will fill up over time. And that buffer just sits, you don't affect that buffer. You don't affect that buffer. Only the computer does. And yeah, when you play from the buffer, it doesn't impact it in any way. It's just up to 3 hours worth of audio, and you can jump around in there. And, once you have more than 3 hours worth of audio, the oldest audio falls off the back of it, and you still have the 3 most recent hours. So that's another thing we've heard from people. Haven't heard from people, rather. We were sort of waiting to see, is 3 hours enough? Do people want more? Do people want less? And it seems like that's a pretty good amount of time for people. There's not too much that happened, 6 hours ago, 12 hours ago that people need to jump back to. So it's something where the buffer is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple for you. You don't have to ever do anything with it except for jump around in it to listen to other audio.
So let's come up with some kind of crazy scenario here where I'm listening to that webinar at work, okay? But I also have iTunes playing, which I probably shouldn't be doing if I'm listening to the webinar, but
sure.
So is intermission capturing only the webinar, or is it interfering at all with what the iTunes, what's playing, or what is in the buffer, I should ask?
It's actually everything. So right now, that's a good question. It's another request we've gotten from people. So right now, it just captures everything that your computer is playing, with the exception of sound effects. So things like mail beeps, IM beeps, those actually just pass right through, because that would be really confusing to get a mail alert if you're listening to the buffer when you've already checked that email. But in terms of if you have 2 different sets of audio playing from iTunes and from a webinar, iTunes, something online, those will either be playing at the same time or they'll be paused at the same time, which is, like I said, that's a feature request we've had from people, is the ability to say, buffer this one app. If you've got iTunes Radio playing, I just want to buffer iTunes Radio, but I do want to be able to watch a YouTube video right now and have the live audio. And so right now in the 1.0, the 1.01 actually, that's not possible, but we're looking at various ways of including apps or excluding apps, so that you could say, I know I always want to have iTunes in the buffer, but I don't necessarily want my web browser in there because I need to be able to look at videos or watch a webinar, things like that. I'm not doing a lot of audio streaming there. So ideally, there'd be a way to say, include this app, but don't include this app. And like I said, that's something that we've had several requests for, and another thing that we're looking at for the future. It's actually a lot of fun when we have a new app like this, because we have the ideas of how we're going to use it and have used it in the past few months. And we said, okay, we're using it and it needs this feature, like the example of the sound effects, where it just lets sound effects pass through. That's something where we were using it and it wasn't doing that. And we said, well, this is no good. I'm confused. I'm getting beeps long after the thing has actually happened, and it's terribly confusing. So we realized, we need to make those just pass right through and not get buffered. So that's something where, we came up with a fix or a new feature. But once it's out there in the wild, it's really fascinating to see how people use this, and just all the different ways that it could be improved for various use cases. So that's, where we'll rapidly have, 1.1, a 1.5, a 2.0 even in the coming months, as we've gotten this feedback and have a chance to act on it.
Interesting. So it's really capturing all the audio. If someone is listening to this recording and they've had to download it, it's not streaming up. Well, they could stream it off the web, but if they've downloaded it, it's still going to be picked up by Intermission.
Right. It's anything that's just about to hit your speakers. So basically, if you think of it as sitting, just before your speakers, anything that's headed there, Intermission will pick up. And like I said, by default, it's not doing anything. It's just passing that on through to the speakers, and you hear that audio live without any issue. But when you want to be able to jump back, then it enables you to do that. And sort of the idea of doing all the audio at once, one, it was the way the implementation worked, but on the back end. But from a user perspective, it's something where you don't necessarily want to have to say, oh, I want to back up this app. Let me, fiddle and select, okay, rewind Safari for 10 seconds. And with this, it's just you say jump back 10 seconds, and then you're all set.
Very nice. Paul, do we have the ability to control the quality of the recording, or is it predetermined?
So that's actually, it's recording raw audio. So it's recording lossless audio, which is, perfect quality audio. So the only issue there is that it used a little bit of disk space in a temp file. It's recording about up to, if it's 3 hours, you're looking at about 2 gigs worth of temp space. So that's, not terribly large for modern hard drives. It's not a huge issue. But it's something where actually we looked at doing compression, and it wasn't feasible as far as being able to jump around in that compressed audio as reliably as we needed it to. So for right now, it's doing this raw audio, and it sounds perfect. You're never going to hear any sort of quality loss, which is a good thing. But it does use a little bit of disk space, which has not been too much of an issue for folks just yet. But we'll see if we need to shrink the buffer to use a little bit less space, or hard drives are generally always getting bigger, so it's not too much of an issue, I think.
Yeah, in fact, I'm really glad to hear that you didn't make the compromise, whether it was for whatever reason, because that means I've got the best I can possibly get.
Right, absolutely.
This sounds like something though that I might want to have running all the time for various reasons. Is my Mac going to take any kind of performance hit by capturing all this?
That's a good question, and certainly there's some level of usage that's going on when it's doing this, but it's incredibly minimal when you're just passing audio through to the speakers when it's live. So yeah, Intermission just runs in the background, and if you look in Activity Monitor, you can see it's using, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2% CPU, and it's really not something where you're going to notice a whole lot of performance hit from it. It's definitely not something that I think anyone should notice when they're using it on any sort of modern Mac. So it's something that, like I said, we've had running in the background on dozens of test machines here for months at this point. So it's definitely something that, you just leave it running, and you could go days without ever using it, and you won't really notice that it was running. And then the time that you say, oh, shoot, I need to record that, or I need to jump back and hear that again, you're actually able to do that.
And the buffer, I want to be absolutely clear that when the buffer fills to the 3-hour point, does it start then dropping off things at the
from the
beginning?
tail end? Yeah, from the tail end. So if it's noon and the computer's been on playing audio since 8 o'clock, it has from 9 to noon, and then at 1 o'clock it'll have from 10 to 1, and so on. So it's just the last 3 hours worth of audio, which like I said is generally what people are going to be looking for. It's going to be pretty unusual to say like, oh, I need that audio from 2 days ago. Generally, what you need is usually, I think, for most people within the past few minutes, or if you're building a buffer of streamed audio, then a couple hours worth of that is generally pretty good.
Yeah, and again, just to make sure, but I like that idea, because that will encourage me to just let it run, take up
Absolutely.
that 2 gig of space, and be able to go back up to 3 hours anytime I want to.
Exactly.
That's nice. Paul, you released this from the Rogue Amoeba website, not in the Mac App Store. We've had conversations about the Mac App Store, the pros and cons and all. Was this a decision, or was this a requirement because of the way that Intermission works?
Right. Yeah, it was a decision that was made for us by Apple's policies for the App Store. This was not something we could do with the App Store restrictions that exist right now. I'm trying to think, our newest app prior to this was an app called Piezo, which is an audio recording tool, which we did get into the App Store. And that's something that we were able to get it in the App Store, but since they have added new restrictions as far as sandboxing goes, we're going to have difficulty updating that very much. We also put Fission, our audio editor, in the App Store, and that has not really had any issues. That's a relatively straightforward application on the same level of like a text editor. An audio editor doesn't need to do a whole lot that could, bump into some of the restrictions that Apple has. But in terms of capturing all the audio and enabling you to buffer it this way, there's simply no way to do it with the restrictions that Apple has. And so it's sort of fortunate, and I think it's a very good thing for users that the App Store is optional on the Mac, and we'd love to have it in there if we could. There's certainly no downside to it. If we can have it in there and also have it direct as we do with Fission and with Piezo, then that's always a good thing. But when it's not possible to do it, we said, we still think this app has value, and we still think it's useful for our users. So we're just going to have to release it direct, and that's all.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. There's this class of apps, and a number of yours belong to this class, that stay outside. They're specialized apps. They're, I think, I hate to say higher level, but apps for people that really know what they're doing. This would be nice to have for somebody that, I was about to say, that didn't know what they're doing. No, that's not what I meant. But that maybe is a little more casual user.
Right.
But at the same time, if they're this interested in buffering 3 hours of audio, they'll come and find you.
Right. Hopefully it's something where, even though it's not in the store, people will be able to find it. And we're fortunate to have been around for, I'm trying to think, when did the Mac App Store come out? Was that 2010? So we were around for 8 years before the Mac App Store. And, we built a pretty solid customer base. And most of our sales to this day, 3 years later, are still direct to our customers. And there's still plenty of people who are, interested to buy software outside the App Store. Like I said, we'd love to be in both, direct sales and in the App Store. But where it's not possible, it's still feasible to have an app that's not in the App Store right now, which is, not a luxury that you have on the iPhone, where, that's the only way to sell software. Fortunately, on the Mac, we have this ability to sell it outside the store.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of world-class software for the Mac, iPhone, and iPad. You know what's bad about new versions of any operating system? When they break your favorite software. The software you depend on to get real work done every day. You get a bright, shiny new OS, only to find out that it looks pretty, but doesn't deliver. You know what's worse? Not being warned that the new OS is going to break your favorite software. Or not hearing from developers about their plans when they know that something is going to break, or when it will be fixed. Smile has a rather unique position with TextExpander Touch, the iOS version of TextExpander. Because of the way iOS sandboxes apps, other developers have to use their software development kit, or SDK, to build support for TextExpander Touch into their apps. Wanting to do this is a no-brainer, since TextExpander Touch is such an amazingly useful app for quickly and easily entering all sorts of text items into a variety of programs. But wanting and doing are two different things. That's why it was so reassuring to see a post to the Smile blog outlining the issues they were facing with Text Expander Touch and the release of iOS 7, what was being done, and how the problem was being solved. Even better, they provide a list of those apps that are already updated to work with Text Expander Touch in iOS 7, and what you can do to help make certain Text Expander Touch is supported in even more of your favorite apps. In a world that's supposed to be about communication, it's refreshing to see some in action. And it doesn't stop there. Smile's support team is among the best for fast answers when problems arise, but problems hardly ever arise. Still, it is nice to know that support is there when you need it. Smile. Great software like Text Expander Touch and communication in action. Wouldn't it be great if you could say that about every company? Visit smilesoftware.com to see all the great Smile products and download free demos of the Mac versions. And of course, you can find Text Expander Touch and PDF Pen in the iOS App Store. Thanks to Smile for supporting this edition of MacVoices. What you said, it's always interesting to see how people use it. What are some of the most interesting use cases you've heard from people, or some of the most surprising things?
Yeah, well, like I said, recording audio from the past, it's something that we had pitched, but definitely hearing from people who said, I saved some audio that I thought I didn't have anymore, and this was great already. So I already found a great use for this, and that was really useful. Another one was actually, it's a little convoluted, a little tricky to set up, and we're actually looking to improve this a little bit. But basically, if you're in any sort of live event, like a lecture or something like that, if you set it up with a pair of headphones, you can hook some headphones up to your computer and then set the computer's microphone up to pull in audio. You can give yourself a real-life rewind button, which is actually really cool and not something we had thought of at all. So basically, if you're listening to a lecture and you say, just like with the stream, if you say, hold on, what did he just say? You'll actually be able to jump back and say, oh, okay, and now I got it, get it through the headphones. And it's a really interesting way of making use of it. It's something that actually I think could be really cool on an iPhone, just in terms of making use of the microphone and then the ability to jump back if, for people who are hard of hearing or, just in a situation where the audio is not that great, like a lecture hall sometimes, the ability to have that rewind is very cool. And like I said, not something we had thought of. So now we're sort of looking at ways that we can make that a lot easier to do for people.
Yeah, that is interesting, and especially the headphones option that or an earpiece like I have in.
Right.
You could have it playing there if you needed to go back and just pick up a little snippet.
Right.
So
exactly.
You never know what people are going to come up with.
That's exactly it. And this is an app where we said, we have a basic idea and we have 2-3 use cases for it that we think are pretty powerful. Recording streaming audio, jumping back in streaming audio, or creating a buffer of streaming audio so that you can skip over songs that you don't want to listen to, skip over ads if you want to. But hearing from people and hearing the very different ways that they're actually making use of it is really interesting, and sort of helps inform the future updates to the product as well. So we want to see how can we make it better to do that. How can we improve the way that works for people?
Yeah, I've watched some of your other apps as they've been released, and you come up with the enhancements and the additions. And you're right. There are things like, okay, that had to be from somebody suggesting it, because it's not something that I think was on the mainstream path of the app.
Right, absolutely. And it's something where we release a 1.0. This is a 1.0, and we see how exactly are people using it, and probably our most popular application, Airfoil, which has been around for about 7 or 8 years now. It's now on version 4, but the 1.0 did not sell terribly well, and it was popular enough. But the things that we added in version 2 and in version 3 and in version 4 is really what sort of propelled that to a lot more popularity. And that's strictly due to hearing from customers and getting it in front of people and seeing, this is how they're using it. And we came up with some of the ideas, but certainly a whole lot of the things that we wind up implementing and wind up creating are from users' suggestions, which is, it's great to hear from them and great to get these ideas. And then I think they're often thrilled when they say, oh, this is exactly what I needed. And, you guys wound up creating it. So that's, it's a good relationship on both ends, I think.
Yeah, and I imagine that with a company like yours, with apps like yours, you have kind of a following of audio people who can't wait for the next thing to come out because they know it's going to be useful. It's something they're going to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something where, we send out an email to our user list, and introduced Intermission to them, and we got a lot of feedback that said, I bought this and I haven't even used it yet because I've used so many of your other applications, and I don't actually encourage this. It's good for our bottom line, but I'd rather people tried it out and said, this is useful. I am going to make use of this, but sooner or later they probably will make use of it. But yeah, it's definitely something where sticking with that niche of doing audio applications has worked pretty well for us because users who are already making use of Audio Hijack Pro can now use Intermission to record audio from the past, say, and that's something where if they already have one of the applications and they know it works well, they'll be much more inclined to pick up another one and combine the two. So it's definitely something where we've been pretty happy to have such a loyal user base and such a loyal is really the word, who are just happy with our applications and give us a lot of feedback and then jump on the newest things when they come out and help us improve those over time as well.
Well, the fact that you're building things that they want helps a lot, And this is one of those apps I can think that, I might see some uses, but I'm going to have to think about it a little bit more as to what I do. But I know there are times that I've had that I would love to be able to go back and just pick up just 10 minutes of audio.
Right, and it's almost like something that maybe should be part of the OS. I don't know that it ever will be, but it's something where it's almost like something where you want the feature there the one time you need it. But I think the more people use it, the more they will see that it actually is useful more and more frequently. So hopefully it's something where people pick it up, people try it out, and say, oh, you know what, this does solve a problem for me, and actually make use of it.
How much does Intermission go for, Paul?
So Intermission is right now it's $15. That's an introductory price. We haven't settled on a final price. That may be the final price. We'll see. But it's pretty affordable, we think. And there's a trial right from our website, obviously. And actually, you can leave it running for free for as long as you want. With each launch, I think it's with 10 minutes of buffered playback. So when you jump back in the buffer and listen to the buffer for 10 minutes, then it'll overlay noise on the audio, and you'll need to either purchase or quit Intermission and relaunch it and lose the buffer and start over. But it is definitely something where people can download it, leave it running for days or weeks, and then when they realize, hey, wait a minute, I do want to jump back, they don't even necessarily have had to have purchased it just yet. But hopefully, they'll realize, oh, this is useful, and I didn't have to pay anything just yet to actually try it. But when they do make use of it, then they can purchase it right online. And like I said, it's $15 and pretty affordable, we think, and pretty useful as well.
All right, I'm about to save you some emails. When I'm doing the trial and it overlays that noise, and I think, oh my God, I need to go back and listen to that, and now I've got noise overlaid. If I buy it, can I take the noise off, or is it just
Yes,
it's too bad?
Actually,
You
yeah.
can.
So that's one where with Audio Hijack Pro, if you make a recording and it has the noise on it, there's actually no way to get rid of it because it's in the recording. With the buffered playback, that noise is added after the fact. So it's something where if you really do need to hear something and you were using it in the trial version and the noise kicked in, you can go online, purchase the key, get it right away, and it shows up right in your web browser and in your email. And then you'll be able to listen to that audio unadulterated and make a recording if you need to as well. So that's just an implementation detail, just the way that it worked out. But it's actually possible to do that, which is nice.
Yeah, very nice, because somebody's going to have that.
Absolutely.
You're going to get that call. So what else is new with Rogue Amoeba? You guys kind of keep a low profile until you bring these things up, and then it's like, oh boy, and then you kind of sneak back into your labs, and we don't hear from you.
Yeah, well, it's something where, a lot of our products are pretty mature at this point, and so they don't necessarily need frequent updates. They've got most of the features that they need for day-to-day use, and so the things that we're building are much bigger features, much bigger updates. And, that's not something that you can talk about week in and week out. You want to actually have something to show people. So, almost really the way Apple does it, where this is not, our model, but, once a year they'll come out and say, okay, this is the new iPhone, this is the new iOS. Here's what's new in it. Here's the new version of macOS 10. And, the other 11 months of the year, there's plenty of speculation about it, but there's not much that's being said by Apple. And we sort of do a similar thing where we're often working on a fairly big update. And, when that comes out, then we try and get a big splash with it and get people interested and then do smaller updates on top of that. But it's something where generally we're working on fairly big updates and don't necessarily have a lot to talk about before they're ready. But, I can say that we're working extensively. We've been working extensively for years at this point on the next version of Audio Hijack. So we're pretty happy with the way that's coming. And hope to have more information on that in the near future. That's going to be a pretty big update for an application that Audio Hijack Pro is now, let's see, it's 10 and a half years old. So it's had multiple updates from there. And, it came out in March of 2003 and had its version 2 was just a year and a half later. And then it's had several big updates, but it's always been in the version 2 branch. And so version 3 of that is something that like I said, we've been working on for literally years at this point, and it's getting close. I don't have a date or anything, but hopefully, if people want to pay attention to our website or look for updates there, that's definitely the place to do it. But that's probably our next big major update will be 1.2 Audio Hijack. And then also, of course, minor updates for macOS 10.9, where we'll need to fix some things and make things work the way they should, and some updates for iOS 7 as well for a couple apps that we have on iOS. So there's a lot of churn. Sounds sort of like a negative word. It's only partially negative. There's a lot of churn that we have to go through on a year-to-year basis, just keeping everything up to date, so that it can be a little bit harder to get these big updates out. But we're always happy when we finally get to one of them and then can talk about it. So that's one that I'm eager to start talking about, but don't really have too much to say about it just yet. Just pay attention to updates, watch for updates.
In the first place, I can't believe Audio Hijack is that old.
Yeah.
That's a little scary. That must mean that we're old.
Well, it means we're old, but it means it's a solid piece of software, and it's stuck with it for a decade, and people are still not just using it, but we get new sales every single day. So that's a good sign that the application is still useful to a lot of people, and we're still committed to it and committed to the next version. So.
And I don't think that's something that many consumers really appreciate, that as you get a stable of products that you keep active and keep live, mature or not, they require some maintenance because of all the changes in the OSs. And that takes time and effort. And, you guys don't do much charging for upgrades. No,
upgrade revenue has never been a terribly large part of our, income. It's something where, certainly for bug fixes, we don't want to charge for that. And we do have upgrade fees for major versions. So Fission 2 came out just over a year ago, actually. And that was a $15 upgrade from version 1. Version 1 had been out for about 5 years at that point, and version 2 was a pretty substantial upgrade. And, it's something where it seemed fair for people who wanted those new features to pay for them. And that seems to have worked pretty well for us. That's actually there's been some discussion recently about upgrades in the app stores, in the iOS app store, but especially in the Mac app store, where you have products that cost, $20, $30, $50, $100, $200. And right now, Apple is not offering any sort of upgrade pricing there. And our friends at Omni ran into sort of a wall there where they wanted to offer even customers who'd purchased in the App Store, they wanted to allow them to upgrade at a discount direct. If they were going to switch them to the direct version, they were going to be able to pay a lower price for that. And that's something that, we've got 15, 20, 30 years worth of software that has had these upgrade prices, as opposed to just buying the same thing over and over again, where maybe 20% of the functionality is new, but you're paying for 80% of it twice over, 3 times over. And it doesn't, that the model of having upgrade fees has always worked pretty well. So it's sort of unfortunate right now that you can't do it in the App Store, and that there's not a good way to do those paid upgrades and discounted upgrades. Really, it's beneficial to the users, and it's beneficial to the developers as well to be able to do that. So that's something that we're sticking with as far as major updates. But yeah, when you're talking about the minor updates that we need to do for 10.9 or for iOS 7, things like that, it's something where it is a lot of work, and it's not the most fun work, because it often feels like you're running in place to maintain the same position. But I think the users appreciate the ability to just update to the newest version, and it works on their new OS, and they don't have too much of a hiccup there. And it's not something where we want to say, give us $5, $10, $20 for that. Hopefully the giving that away for free and saying, this was just an incremental upgrade, there wasn't much in the way of new functionality, it just keeps it working for you. Hopefully making people happy by giving them that for free then, encourages them to purchase the paid upgrades that are actually providing a lot more functionality, or look at our other products. So it's something where, we've been fortunate enough to make enough money off direct sales and off, new sales, that we don't charge for too much in the way of upgrades. So, I mentioned Intermission 1.1 and 1.5 that would have some new features, and those would certainly be something that we'd give away. It's not something where we'd have a paid upgrade 3 months or 6 months into the product, even though it will, potentially have a lot of new functionality. It's something where, that's sort of a way to reward the people who got it early on and show them, this product is continuing to develop and continuing to gain new features as well.
Yeah, it's a good policy. It's too bad that there isn't that kind of upgrade policy, because I think that's where we see a lot of apps start to break. Or
yeah, absolutely.
Pieces break, or more than pieces break, and then there's no incentive for anyone to go and buy it because it doesn't work as you move forward, and the whole thing just falls apart. So it would be nice to have some pricing, but at the very least, I like your model of saying, okay, after a couple updates, we do an upgrade pricing, and it's well worth it.
Right. Yeah. Again, when there's major new functionality, that seems fair on all ends to pay for. But in general, we try and do that's sort of on our website we have our upgrade policy, and it basically says we try to do what's fair for both of us, for the company and for the customers. And I think we've done a pretty good job with that so far, and don't really have any plans to change that.
I'm looking forward to playing with Intermission. I just turn it on and forget it until I need it, and that's when it'll be sitting right there. $15. The website is rogueamoeba.com. Paul Kafasis, it's great to see you. Thanks so much, and come back more often.
Well, you just got to invite me. Then we can talk all kinds of things. It doesn't just have to be about our software. Absolutely. All
right, you got it. You'll be hearing. I'll pester you.
All right. Thanks, Chuck.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices, the talk of the Mac community. Please check out our website. We'll have links to Intermission, to Rogue Amoeba's website, to everything else I can think of. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including MacVoices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the MacVoices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.